Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli wa nusallimu ala rasulihil kareem. Amma ba'd. Fa'a'uzu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone. I'm Dr. Uzair Usmani and I am CEO of Noor Sharia Solutions, and we are a Sharia advisory company registered in GCC. Today, we are diving into one of the most vital instruments in the modern Islamic finance landscape, and that instrument is the Sukuk. Often you will hear Sukuk referred to as Islamic bonds. While that is a helpful starting point for a conversation, but it is technically an over simplification. So by the end of this session, you will understand exactly why that is, how these instruments are structured, and why they play such a critical role in global capital markets. So this is we are going to discuss today, and Sukuk are one of the most vital instruments around the globe, and actually it is already adopted many Islamic countries, not only Islamic countries but the other countries as well. So now first we need to understand what Sukuk is, because if we don't understand what Sukuk is, so we'll be get confused and we cannot make a difference between Sukuk and the bond, because ultimately almost the result is the same. So it is very important and imperative for us to understand the definition of Sukuk. So what is the definition? The word Sukuk is the plural of the Arabic word which means sak. Sak means it is an essentially means a certificate or a deed, and in modern finance, according to the Islamic Financial Services Board, IFSB, Sukuk are the certificates of equal value that represent undivided ownership in the tangible asset, usufructs, the right to use an asset, or services, or in the ownership of an asset or a particular project. Right? So we understand from the definition which I actually shared, Sukuk actually represents either tangible assets or services, or the ownership in the asset, or ownership in the particular specific project. Right? So it represents the actual asset or the actual usufruct or actual services which actually is the underlying asset. Now here is the question. What is the main fundamental difference between an Islamic bond, which is called Sukuk, and the bond, which is a conventional bond? What is the fundamental difference? Why aren't they just bonds? Why can't we say that to Sukuk they are just bonds? Why we are actually making difference between bond and Sukuks? So to understand better, we need to understand what bond is. A conventional bond is a debt obligation. I'm sharing you, a definition and the underlying meaning of, bond. It is actually a loan from an investor to an issuer, where the issuer promises to pay back the principal plus interest. So we understand from this, actually bond actually represents loan, right, and which is ultimately paid back by the issuer with the profit. And Islam says that the charging and paying interest is actually riba, which is actually prohibited in the eyes of Islam. That is non-Sharia compliant. So that is the one difference. The second difference, which is also very important, first we understand that bond is non-Sharia compliant because of the obvious reason that because it actually represents loan and with the profit, and the profit on the loan, that is riba. However, there is another difference. A sukuk cannot even be traded on par value, as it is against the main ruling of Sharia, that sale to third party, or we say that in Arabic, bay'u dain min ghairi man alayhi dain. Right? So this is the another reason, that is as per the IUF standards, and all the Islamic scholars, they believe that it is also non-Sharia compliant because of the second reason, a debt sale to a third party, or in other words, I would say that it is bay'u dain min ghairi man alayhi dain. From this explanation, we understand the major fundamental difference between sukuk and the bond is that bond only represents debt and also profit thereon, which tend amount to riba, while a sukuk cannot be a debt instrument, but instead it is an asset-based or asset-backed investment which actually represents tangible asset or usufruct or services. So this is the main difference between bond and the sukuk. So it means that if when you buy a sukuk, you're not lending money. This is the main and very interesting part. If you purchase a sukuk, you're actually not lending money to the other person. But what you are actually doing, you are actually participating in the ownership of an income which is actually being generated from the asset. You're actually participating in that. You're actually purchasing the asset. You're actually purchasing the tangible asset, or you are actually purchasing the services. That's actually sukuk is representing. While while bond, they don't represent physical asset, tangible asset. So before we go deeper, and I want to address the most common question I receive: isn't a sukuk just an Islamic bond? While they serve the same function, what is the function? Raising capital for an issuer and providing a return to an investor. They are fundamentally different in their legal and economic DNA. So we need to understand what is the fundamental and what is the basic difference between sukuk and the bond, right? So if you see the nature of the contract, that actually represents loan. If I have the debt of the bond is a debt, and bond is representing loan. So it's a loan, it's a certificate which is actually representing a loan. On the other hand, sukuk is representing the tangible assets, services, or specific ownership in the project or in the services. This is the first thing. Relationship is that relationship creditor and debtor. The relationship of the debt is just like a creditor and debtor. While in the relationship, in the form of sukuk, if you are purchasing a sukuk, you are actually a partner or the owner of the underlying asset. Right? This is the second thing. Secondly, underlying asset. There is no underlying actual physical tangible asset available in bonds. But in sukuk, there is an underlying asset. There is a tangible asset. And it is practically, physically available over there. Right? So it must be tangible. Secondly, the return which is being generated on debt, on bond, because it is a debt-based transaction, so the result, the interest, the profit which is being generated, it is actually riba. It is non-Sharia compliant. It is haram in the eyes of Sharia. While the profit which is generated from sukuk, either it is a rent or either it is a profit in terms of, because it is if a partnership based sukuk, we'll discuss that later, or it is a service-based service. So either of these forms, all are Sharia compliant. If you talk about the risk exposure, it shows credit worthiness and performance of the asset and it is locally, associated with the bond. While any legal, for Sharia, if there is any non-Sharia non-compliance, it can't be, dealt with in Sukuk. So these are the basic and fundamentals difference between bond and Sukuk. Now, here comes the point. I would love to share with you the core principles of Sukuk. On the principles, where there are many principles, but I am going to share with you these 4 to 5 basic main principles, and we understand that how these the Sukuk are actually built on. So to understand how we move from debt to investment, we must look at the foundational principles that govern every Sukuk. First thing, asset linked. There must be an underlying asset. This ensures that the financial activity is tied to the real economy rather than pure speculation. This is the first thing. Secondly, profit and loss sharing return must be derived from the performance of underlying asset, such as rent from a building or profit from a business venture rather than a fixed predetermined interest rate. So it means that, so if I purchase a Sukuk, I will get either a rent or profit or a fee, right? This is how it is done, but it cannot be a fixed interest rate because interest is generated normally from on loan. Sharia compliance, the third point. The underlying asset must be halal. You cannot issue a Sukuk backed by prohibited industries like gambling, alcohol, or conventional banking system. So it means that bonds can be issued on these things, these non-Sharia compliant things, but Sukuk cannot be issued on these non-Sharia compliant things. Not on alcohol, not on gambling, not on tobacco, and there's other things. This is the three parts. The fourth thing is that the prohibition of gharar. The structure must avoid gharar or excessive uncertainty. The rights and obligations of the investor must be clearly defined, right? When I say that gharar, it also means the gambling. So it cannot be gambling also. Gharar, but Sukuk cannot be issued on the basis of gambling. The fifth point, Sharia-compliant framework. So you cannot issue Sukuk on Ijara while applying rules of partnership of the sale or the sale. The reason? Because the framework is very important. If I am issuing Sukuk based on Ijara, I cannot treat that as Sukuk based on partnership. I cannot treat that Sukuk based on sale. I cannot treat that Sukuk based on any other framework. So framework is very important. This is not only associated with the Sukuk, but all other sales, all other agreements of Islamic Sharia as well, the law of the contract as well. Now, here comes the point. I would like to, talk about the anatomy of a Sukuk issuance. How does a company or government actually issue Sukuk these days? They typically use a special purpose vehicle. It's called SPV. Through special purpose vehicle, government and the companies normally issue the certificates, right? So the originator means, we have some terms here. The originator means the company needing funds. This is the first thing. The SPV is the other party. It means special purpose vehicle. I already discussed about it, but here it means an independent legal entity created specifically to hold the assets and issue the certificates, right? This is the second thing. The process. How does, the Sukuk are actually issued? The originator which are the normally the the Sukuk issuer people who actually issues Sukuk. The originator transfers assets like a building or a fleet of planes or any other asset or any other tangible asset to the SPV, right? This is the first part. Secondly, the SPV issues certificates to the investors, to the Sukuk holders. Thirdly, investors pay the SPV for these certificates, and the SPV pays that money to the originator. And these assets generate cash flow, which is passed back to the investors as their return. So this is how it is done. Right. From this explanation, we understand that actually how Sukuk are actually issued. And just to give you a small example, I hope that will be good for us. The example is that let's suppose if there is a company, we can say that it's a X company. X company needs funds because the company doesn't have the funds. So X company needs the funds. So what will we do? They actually sell some of its assets. Like let's for example, they have some plant. So they sell this plant to SPV and through SPV to Sukuk holders. And Sukuk holders are sometimes they are banks and sometimes they are common persons, common men. So common man actually purchases that plant through SPV. So all operation which is being done right now, it is through SPV. So originator is the X company and people who are purchasing are the Sukuk holder, and SPV is actually playing a role of agent of Sukuk holders, right? So once this plant is sold to the Sukuk holders, just like share. Now Sukuk holders, they become the owner and they rent this property, this land or this plant or this asset back to the X company. Now X company is actually using the asset of someone else. So when they are using someone else's asset, they started paying rent, right? So when they pay rent, so it will be paid through SPV through to Sukuk holders, right? The Sukuk holder gets profit in this form. However, if this structure is based on bond, let's assume for a minute, right? So what will happen at this point? There will be no asset available, right? And the holder of bond, they will be getting profit and it will be a loan, profit on the loan, and it will be non-Sharia compliant. So it will create the difference between bond and also with the Sukuk. Now we understand from this conversation that why Sukuk are most important instruments in Islamic finance world. So let me share with you how many types of Sukuk are there around the globe. There are many types, right? And there is a hybrid Sukuk, there is a Ijara Sukuk, there is a airtime Sukuk. Many types are there for the Sukuk, right? But if you talk about the basic types on which these many types are actually based or underlying, the types are actually, you see that almost the 5 types. So I'm going to share you the 5 major types of Sukuk, though there are many types of Sukuk are there around the globe, but I'm just sharing the fundamental, most general types of Sukuk. And you see why Sukuk are important, because IOF has already issued the guidelines, standard, I think it's standard number 17, I think, if I'm not wrong, and standard number 62 about Sukuk. So these are very important. So I'm actually sharing with you big five sukuk types that actually dominate market. First of all, the sukukul ijara. It means that lease-based sukuk. This is the most popular kind of sukuk. Think it is as a sale and leased back arrangement. The investors own the asset and lease it back to the shore. The rent paid by the shore becomes the profit for the investor. Right? For example, actually I've stated the example. Let me show you another example. For example, a company needs fund. Company as originator sells its asset through SPV to subscribers, and these subscribers are called sukuk holders. And then these sukuk holders give this asset back to the originator on rent. So this is called sukukul ijara, and this is one of the most majorly used sukuk type around the globe. As per my experience, this is the most used type of sukuk around the globe, and the benefit is that you get the fixed income through in the form of rent. Sukukul mudarba, this is the second type of sukuk. Mudarba, it's a kind of partnership in which one partner invests. It's called Rabul Mal. The other partner actually works and invests and actually provide its services and expertise. It's called mudarib. And when the profit is achieved, it is shared between these two on pre-agreed ratio. Or if there is a loss will always be borne by investor, which is called the bull mal. So in case of sukuk mudarba, how it is being done? This is a partnership. The issuer is the manager. The person who actually issues the sukuk is the manager, and the investors provide capital to the manager, to the originator through SPV. Profits are divided or split according to pre-agreed ratio. However, if there's a loss, the investor bear it unless it was due to the negligence of the manager. So this is called mudarba sukuk. This is also worldwide used sukuk, right? The third type is sukukul musharka, joint venture. Musharka, you know that it's a kind of partnership in which both partners invest and some venture, and both partners gets the ownership, and both partners according to their respective ratios of ownership suffers loss. If there is a profit, it will be shared according to pre-agreed profit ratio. This is called musharka. So how this sukukul musharka are issued, how it work? So both insurer and the investors contribute capital to a project. It means that the issuer and the sukuk holders both invest through SPV in a capital project, Profits are shared on pre-agreed percentage. Whatever the profit it is always shared. And the losses are shared according to the proportion to the capital contribution. So it doesn't mean that, it also means that the loss is always associated with the ownership pro rata basis, and the profit, it can be anything pre-agreed ratio. However, one thing is very clear, the investors who are actually sleeping partners, in our case these are the sukuk holders, cannot get the profit more than the share of their investment. They cannot get that. So this is the third type of sukuk. The fourth one, which is also very important, is called sukukul wakala. Wakala is actually means agency. When you appoint someone, it means wakala, you are doing agency agreement with that person. Investors appoint an agent to the issuer. Agent, it means the issuer, to manage a portfolio of assets. The agent receives a fee for the management, and the investors receive the income generated from the asset. So it means that the sukuk holders through HPB appoint the issuer who actually wants, receive funds as an agent and provide the capital, and issuer, as fund manager, uses that for investment for, of course, the Sharia compliant purposes. And whatever the profit that actually achieves from that investment is always linked to the investor, the sukuk holder. However, the manager, which is the issuer in our case, will get the wakala fee, which is called the management fee. It is Sharia compliant. And the last one is, though it is not the last one, but I am sharing the basic five types. Sukuk ul istisna, the manufacturing construction sukuk. Istisna means manufacturing, in order to manufacture. It's called istisna. And this is also used for funding projects like factories or infrastructures. The sukuk is issued to the fund, the creation of an asset that will be delivered in the future. Right? So this is called istisna sukuk. So these are basically 5 types of sukuk that I have shared with you. First is sukukul ijara, sukukul mudarba, sukukul musharaka, and sukukul wakala, and the last one is sukukul isna. As I already told you, there are many other types as well, but these are the main 5 types that are actually being used. Now sometimes they are being used, hybridly as well. So there is hybrid sukuk. One part is actually associated with mudarba, the other part is associated with ijara, right? It is actually based on the objectives of the customer, of the issuer, and also the objectives of of the sukuk holders L1 through SPV. Right. So the last thing actually I want to share with you is about the risks and the future outlook of sukuk. So I already have shared with you the points of the difference between bonds and sukuk. This is the first thing that I have discussed. Secondly, what is the process of issuing sukuk and how SPV issuer are involved, and I also have discussed the major types of sukuk we already have covered. The point which I am going to raise right now is the risk and the future outlook of sukuk. First of all, we need to understand the very important point. No investment is without risk, especially if you are dealing Islamic Sharia. No investment is without risk. If you are investing someone, if you are investing somewhere, as per Sharia, you have to assume the risk of the investment as well. It is not Sharia compliant by at all if you are investing something, purchasing assets, and you are saying that the risk, I will not bear the risk will be bear by someone else. However, the profit I will get. The profit I am getting, the loss I will not bear. This is not Sharia compliant. This is totally not Sharia compliant, and there are many hadiths and many verses that are explicitly says that it is non-Sharia compliant. So in sukuk, the risks are often tied to the underlying assets performance and the credit worthiness of the obliger. Right? So the risk is that how the asset of the sukuk is going to perform. If the asset performs well, the profit will be more. If asset performs less, there will be less profit in case if it is musharaka, sukuk. If asset destroys, and if it is ijara sukuk, if asset destroys, there will be no profit, because ijara only performs on the asset, and if there is no asset, there will be no ijara. So that is the difference between Islamic and conventional. In conventional, if the asset is, first of all, there is no asset, even the asset is involved, the profit is still will be there, So this is the main difference between Islamic and conventional. Also, we also face regulatory challenges, as you know that the different jurisdictions have different legal frameworks for treating ownership of assets. So the regulatory part also plays very important role, especially when you are issuing sukuk or when you are actually providing Sharia advisory for sukuk as well. You need to check what are the regulations and the regulatory perspective specifically related with the sukuk, because every country has different guidelines about regulatory guidelines about sukuk. So the conclusion that I actually want to hear to make right now, Sukuk have evolved from a niche product uh, to a mainstream global financial tool used by governments and corporations alike. So it is, something that is globally accepted, and it is something that is not new. It is something that is unanimously accepted by, many corporations, many governments. They offer a unique way to bridge the gap between ethical, value-based investment and the need for liquid, tradable financial instruments. They actually bridge the gap. So, as for the world, increasingly looks for sustainable, reasonable, and impact SRI investing, Sukuk are naturally positioned to lead that charge. So these are the very important point that I actually would like to make. And the last thing actually I would like to say that Alhamdulillah, as a a Sharia advisory firm, we have been providing the services of Sukuk management and Sukuk Sharia advisory and Sukuk documentation review. Alhamdulillah, we have been doing that, and we are capable of doing that. So we from the platform of Noor Sharia Solutions provide Sukuk management services to our all clients around the globe, and it will be very good for us to for everyone who actually come and get our services, because Alhamdulillah we are expert in this field. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm very happy to take if you any questions. If you have, you can ask the question on our comment section as well. And I also would like to update you. This is a very just brief introduction of Sukuk. Sukuk actually requires full length, training. Sometimes a week day training. It involves many documentation and many other things. But I have just summarized and tried to summarize. Hopefully you will like it. And thank you very much for your time. God bless you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. Ameen. Wa akhiru da'wana. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullah wa ahsan al jaza.